Next we have Magnus. Some of you may know him as Mew, performed here last night. He's going to tell us about why choices hold you back. Have a round of applause for Mew coming out.
Hi guys. I want to talk about, like he said, how choices can hold you back, or number of choices. It's called the paradox of choice, because usually you want, when you're producing something, making something, you would like the possibility to get as many choices as you can, so you can make the best one. So in theory, you would like infinite number of choices. So you could, for example, when making music, you would like to have access to an infinite number of sounds, so you can pick the best one at every certain, at every point in time. But what happens is, when you try to be creative that way, you lose. You actually get paralyzed by the number of choices, because you get afraid of doing the wrong one. And that's why you have to try to find ways to narrow your scope into how you get the most out of the choices you need. And what I mean by that is, well, for me, it's actually to place limitations on myself. Like, you can, for example, say, you can only make a song in a certain BPM, that's beats per minute, like a certain musical tempo, or just one key. And then you try to make as most out of it as you can. Like sometimes when I start a song, I don't do the rules. When you limit yourself, you don't do it. It's not a rule that says that you have to do this throughout the song. You just have to do it long enough to get your creative juices flowing. So I can, for example, tell myself that this, like one of the tracks I played last night, I started it out and I told myself I'm only going to use the synth called Zerum. I'm only going to use a distortion plugin called Trash 2, and I'm only going to use my own vocals. So I just started working with that, and suddenly because you sit down in front of the computer and there's this blank stare, and you can't make anything, you're paralyzed. And this is we call paralysis by analysis, because if you think too much, then you start dropping, and thinking gives you more choices, because thanks to technology we have today, we actually do have infinite amount of choices. So what you need to do with this infinity of stuff, you need to select certain things to get you going. And yeah, it's really, it works in so many ways. Like, for example, how Peter Jackson started making movies, how J.J. Abrams started. They had this shittily little camera, and they just went out filming. And that kind of guerrilla filmmaking and music making, like when you do what you can with what you have, that often, you can see this kind of inspiration and creativity flow through people who are now really big and successful, and they're really good in what they're doing. They often started out with this little, very limited means of how they could produce stuff. Like Peter Jackson had a little 8mm camera, and J.J. Abrams, he talked a lot about this in that movie of his that I don't remember the name of. But you learn the basics that way. It's kind of like if you would do, I don't know, a snowboard movie. You could do a lot of planning, you could do a lot of stuff, and you usually, perhaps you get into, when you got up on the slopes and you film 2 or 3 jumps, and then you go, about this and that, because you actually plan too much. But if you only go up there with a GoPro, or like a shitty little camera or whatever, you will probably get better results the first time. Even though you learn a lot, and you probably have to do it all over again to get a more professional result, you still have a pure flow of inspiration and creativity. And that's why I'm a really big fan of limiting myself. And even though it seems that you would like to have, like I said, infinite amount of choices, if you see in Pixar cars, sometimes you have to go left to go right. And that's, thank you for coming. Thanks.
Thank you, Magnus. I oftentimes have trouble deciding between all the infinite choices, so that's helpful advice.